Greetings, listeners, and welcome to Roll Off a Tangent, episode 26. My name is Robert Gibson, and tonight I'm once again joined by my co-hosts Nikita Zuev and XJ. Today we shall examine another story from the Conan saga. Its title, The City of Skulls. I shall first quickly rattle through a summary of the plot, not because I expect anyone to remember the details, but as an easy way of conveying the thematic ingredients of this sort of story. And then the team will subject it to our usual barrage of insightful analysis. Our story begins with Conan, his trusted ally Juma, and a score of men from Turan who are making a perilous journey to convey a princess named Zosara to be wedded to the great Khan of the Kuigar nomads. On their way to their destination, they are assaulted by warriors who slaughter most of the caravan and take Conan, Juma, and Zosara prisoners. At journey's end, in Shamballa, the city of skulls of the story's title, Conan and Juma are thrown into a dungeon while poor Zosara is reserved for the usual fate worse than death of a captive princess. Shamballa's god king, Jalung Thongpa, rules his domain with an iron fist, metaphorically speaking. He's actually rather pudgy. His citizens afraid of his very nature, as he's believed to be a descendant of Yama, king of demons. Jalung is served by shamans and sorcerers whose leader is Tanzong Tengri, who foils Conan's first attempt to escape, and Conan and Juma are then sold as galley slaves and are taken to other lands, always dreaming of escape. When they finally do manage to burst free from their oars and return to Shamballa, they improvise an escape route which takes them deeper into the city and its dank tunnels. The duo eventually find themselves in the belly of Demon Yama's octagonal temple, where Jalung, the repulsive god king, is performing a ritual under the new moon. His plans of marriage and sacrifice of Zosara are interrupted by our heroes, and we are then treated to a battle to the death with the magicians and with an awakened statue. Our protagonists triumph through quick wit and barbaric instincts, saving their souls and the princess's honor. Victorious, they set off towards the lands of Kuigar to carry out their original mission. That's a summary, and you can see it's really heavy stuff.
Awesome.
So,
Robert, great recap. Honestly, maybe we should make you the designated recapper.
Yeah,
if that's the word.
Yeah,
I think so.
As long as it makes the podcast sound so proper when it really is.
Yeah, right. Like actually, like a good podcast.
like we're being very serious. Like we're serious critiques and analysis here. Or maybe the two of you are, but I'm just here to have my cup of coffee.
Well, actually, we're not gonna make you. We're not gonna let you have too much coffee because we're gonna ask you first. What did you think about the story?
What? This time it's me first. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so first of all, this is what you expect out of every other Conan story. Full of action, pacing is amazing. It starts off with a bang. Like it starts off right in the middle of just when a battle is happening, and that's actually quite rare because not a lot of story starts off in the middle of a battle or some kind of a skirmish, because the setup to leading to that skirmish then takes a different turn, and you then have to start weaving in the reasons leading up to that skirmish usually, and it doesn't happen often. Often it's more you start off slow and then you build up, and then then you have that battle, and then you go on. Whereas for this particular story, you start out right in the middle of it, and that sets the pacing right from the start. And it's a very punchy story. There's something happening almost every paragraph. As usual, the scenery is lavishly described. I have very little problems seeing it in my mind's eye, and that is very important to me, because if a scene is poorly described, then I usually can't follow, because I'm trying to work out in my mind where the characters are. And that's usually for people who write and then don't focus on where the characters are, that tends to become a problem for me, because I then spend more time trying to work out where the characters are than actually focusing on the story, which is terrible for the writer, because they have completely lost me as a reader. And again, there's plenty of action, there's plenty of mystique, there's plenty of very flavorful description of the environment, and the invention of the civilizations therein are also very, very colorful. You can see that it's based on India, basically. A very which you can then, because of when it is written, you can actually then kind of see what it influences later on. Because when I was reading through the description of Shamballa and the description of the Marusians, I'm very much reminded of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Yeah, with all the skull motif and everything. I think that bit feels a bit overdone to me. Too much skulls, really.
Too many skulls in the story called The City of Skulls.
Yeah, I mean, like when you have a tower, and every block is a carving of a skull. I think that's a little bit too much. Yeah.
It's very, if you're familiar with Warhammer 40,000, the way the realm of Khorne, the god of blood, is described, is that there's like skulls everywhere. Yeah, it's very over the top, super metal.
Yeah, if it was written by a more modern author, it would have given me the feeling of like a Disney theme park.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know why in my mind there is such a differentiation between Robert E. Howard's time and a modern writer. I don't know, but there's just this feeling in me that if it's written by a modern author, I'll be like, dude, you're doing the theme park thing a little bit too much, man.
Yeah, XJ, Nikki and I played.
Wait, hold on. Where would you rank this story?
Where would I rank this story?
Yeah, rank this compared to all the other Conan ones.
7.5. It's good,
7.5.
but there are some serious flaws with it. Yeah.
Okay, Robert, you can do the reveal now.
I was going to say, Nikki and I have played a dastardly trick on you. This is a Conan story, no doubt about that, but it's not by Robert E. Howard.
No?
No. So in a sense, your instincts have led you rightly in your comments about when it was written. I think you may have been, sniffing out some of the truth. It was written by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter.
Oh.
Yeah, in 1967, from what I remember.
1967, right? That's even later than I thought.
Oh wow. Okay. Then I guess I do have a good instinct. Yeah, because it does have some serious flaws. It does have some.
Okay, what are the serious flaws? If we may ask you.
So first of all, although the scenes are the individual scenes themselves are largely described, the problem is that they are not very connected to each other. So we first start off with something like the steppes, it was feeling a bit like a tundra, but it's really a steppe. It feels like a Mongolian steppe kind of place. And then within 2 days, they went from the steppes to tropical place, and I'm struggling to think in real world terms how that could possibly be.
I thought it was Himalayas or Tibet or something like that. Isn't that how that landscape looks like?
Well,
sort of
yeah. I mean, it's maybe, I don't know, but I mean, it's for sure inspired from that region. I can tell. The problem is that what the problem I have is I'm struggling to see how you can get from a place that is that cold and barren to a tropical jungle within 2 days.
Yeah.
Because to get to a tropical place, is it the latitude or the longitude?
Yeah, latitude. Yeah,
the latitude. I mean, there's no way you can cover that distance in 2 days.
So would you say if the journey was longer, as it was written in the story, it would make more sense? If they said like, "Oh, a week's journey onward."
If they had some kind of transport that takes them that distance, or
Did they have horses, or am I
they
wrong?
have horses, but I mean, like, I don't think they can cover that distance. Like, it's not something that I think most people would care that much about, but it does break immersion for me, because I'm finding that unbelievable. And it would have been better off if they set Shamballa within that region, make it more Tibetan than tropical India or something like that. The other thing that I find a serious flaw is I can't make out why did it take that barge out in a long loop back to Shamballa, other than to give Conan an excuse to find a secret way back into the
Temple.
The temple.
I do agree that the story would benefit if they escaped in a different city that was like nearby or something and then came back.
But something I just don't see why they need to take that long barge thing. But well,
I kind of like it, honestly. And let me explain why. I like it because it's so out of the ordinary. You know, you would have it so that like, oh, they become slaves on the ship, and then the ship parts that night, and that night they find the courage to fight back, and they return and save the princess. But here it's a little bit more, strangely, at least to me, realistic. The idea where they've been captured, and there you go, you've been captured. You're a slave. You gotta go on this journey now. You are on this rowboat. In some sense, I could even see a Conan story starting this way. He has been on, for months on this rowboat, and finally he has the courage to sort of like, or the strength to push away the slavers and get off it, right? So for me, for some reason, this lull of time, this month or so that they did with the trade route, was it a week?
Yeah, I think it's.
See, my mind is describing it as a month for some reason. For some reason, that lull in the story felt really significant to me, and felt like layers are being added to it. Like that actually passage of time is transpiring, that this is not all happening in one night, that it's not like they out of nowhere had the strength after a large fight, like 2 large fights, to break away and break free, right?
Well, I mean, I remember another story that had Conan breaking out of a ship's galley, which we read before as well. That was after he became king. I can't recall the title.
Hour of the Dragon? Do you mean the novel?
Yeah.
Hour of the Dragon.
Yeah. Anyway, it just seems like a repeat to me. it felt a bit contrived, mostly because I'm like, what's the point of taking a loop around and ending back up in the same city? And but those are like minor things that will stick in my mind, like a thorn. The big issue I had was the two bigger issues I had was I felt like the way the Marusians were being described was a lot ruder than Robert E. Howard normally does. Like, it's like one step away from calling them monkeys and dogs. I'm like,
Well, they're very fatalistic, and that's the point about them, isn't it? I think that's fairly all right as a genuine Howard.
No, I mean more like the way. So it starts off right from the start, like when they did the surprise attack on Conan and his caravan, and the way it's being described was felt like they were really little more than savages. And then when we further go into the city, they were really described as like very barbaric. And I'm like, feels a little bit different from the usual Howard, because Robert E. Howard does have a little bit more respect.
Yeah, the Picts have way more not pleasing, but like how would I say it, sparing description in the Beyond the Black River, right?
Yeah,
they're not
I
described
that
this way.
They're not described in this very dismissive manner, because we in the Black River there was a real sense of why the Picts are doing the way the things that they're doing. And there are very strong reasons. They are very brutal, they are very savage against their enemies, but there's a reason for that, and they don't come across as just being like uncivilized, even though they are a tribe of barbarians, just like Conan is. And the other big issue I had is I don't know why. Like, we all know why the goal is there, but when last week in our podcast we're talking about why Joanna was in the show, and let's just be the goal for the hero to have at the end of the show. This one, the princess is just a plot device, and she's you might as well as take her out and replace her with a MacGuffin, and everything will still be kosher in terms of the story. And I think like that is very lazy. If we're gonna put a character in, she should have at least a couple of lines and not just screams. I don't know.
Yeah,
She does not have any lines. That's true.
I'm like, what the hell, man? That's just so effing lazy.
Howard was much better at his female characters in his own stories than Zosara is in this one.
He had several stories with leading ladies too in his medieval France epic. So let's agree on this. This is a very good imitation of the work of Robert E. Howard, but it is not Robert E. Howard's work, and we have systematically discussed here why it doesn't fit the golden standard of Robert E. Howard.
There's lots of other points that could be made as well.
Well, Robert, you can get on that in a second. I'm just trying to make a point. When I was trying to find a story that felt like Robert E. Howard's work, I was trying to look through a bunch of catalogs of stories, and there are other interesting stories in this catalog that maybe one day we will also visit. But for this first time, for this experiment, so to speak, and I'm very sorry, XJ, that you were
horrible. We're no longer friends.
Yeah, well, you were part of this experiment. Yes, I'm very sorry. But the point of it was I was trying to find a story that felt enough like Howard and had a fairly benign plot, so to speak, in a sense that, like, you know, there's a new city, there is a crazy god thing going on, and you know, someone needs to be rescued, you know, but with one caveat. In my opinion, the one shining beacon of the story is Juma. Juma is an awesome character. I really like him. I wish he was described better by the story in some areas. You know, because at certain points they just say the black, which is kind of like, you know, you could have said any other adjectives to describe this warrior. You know, like his skin tone, I don't think is a like maybe once or twice is even a stretch, but okay. It was basically like numerously done everywhere, which I think like it's just a bad descriptive in the end. That's, you know, point number one. You could describe somebody way better than just the color of their skin.
You know, I'm
yeah.
actually trying to recall all the Conan stories I've read, but I don't really recall Robert E. Howard ever describing anyone in his stories by just color.
Yeah.
I think I recall he would describe whether they're darker skin tone or whatever, but then he quite immediately moved on beyond that, and then talk about other things.
Exactly, other descriptions. But anyway, besides the fact that the description sucks for the character themselves is amazing. I really like Juma. Juma is a hardy, you know, like man who doesn't really care about the hardships of life and who will laugh all of it off. And there are moments when he doesn't laugh it off, and that's when like tension really rises, when he's like, okay, things are actually super serious now, and you know, you gotta really fight for your life at this moment. But usually he is this jovial giant, which is a stark contrast to Conan, because Conan is also a giant.
He's an edgy giant.
Yeah, he's
patient.
Exactly. He has a lot of wrath and sorrow in him, as well as justice. While Juma has taken a very similar path in his life, and he has come out of it as a more positive person. And it's really a joy to see them work together. I wish there were more stories with Juma and Conan, but there aren't. This is, I think, the one and only, at least in short stories. There are some comics where Juma appears, but when it comes to short stories, this is the only appearance of Juma, and that really sucks, because I think Juma is a really cool character.
Well, that's true. Although, in general, now I'm thinking back, I feel like there aren't a lot. None of the characters are very. The focus in this short story is definitely not on the characters. Yeah, they aren't. They're quite empty, I think. Now that I think about it, yeah.
For sure, they are driving the plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Although, well, I mean, it's 15 pages, so. Although, come to think of it, Robert E. Howard had been able to do a lot more with characters, even within a very short story. And I'm particularly remembering one of the very early ones that we did. The one in the temple. Yes, that is exactly the one that I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah. The play, as you described it.
Yeah. The detective stage play. I was. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my take.
You were mentioning about the fact that you wanted to say 1,000 more things that were wrong with the story, Robert.
Well, maybe about 5 more, maybe not 5. Right. Point number 1.
Yeah.
This story we're talking about is a very linear plot. That is to say, the spotlight is on Conan all the way through. Now, in Howard's shorter stories, that's sometimes true also. In somewhat longer Conan stories, what he usually does is he varies the viewpoint in from section to section. So although Conan dominates the story, he does have scenes in which Conan doesn't appear, and he generally broadens the narration so that you get a feeling of the width of the world that the whole story is transpiring in. Like, for example, in A Witch Shall Be Born and Black Colossus, these kind of novellas that are more than 40 pages long, that enriches the story as well. Now, I'm not making a hard and fast point here, but it is suggestive that he doesn't do that. The writers don't do that here. Another point is that talking about discussing pastiches, as we're doing in effect, stories that are deliberately written in the style of another author. One potential would be, instead of looking at a story like this one, which was entirely written by other people than Howard, if you looked at some of the stories which were begun by Howard, left unfinished by him, and completed by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter, then you would have the fun of trying to spot the exact point at which one writer takes over from the other. I haven't tried to do this, but it should be possible. Like, there's a story, Wolves Beyond the Border, which is started off by Howard and finished by, I think, let's see, L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter again, like this one, if I remember correctly. Anyway, there are probably others. That's just one I happened to look up today. And
I will. Yeah.
Go on.
I would say that the tendency, at least that I've seen, when someone is writing a pastiche, is that they overcompensate a lot when it comes to the style of the author. You can see this here because the gruesomeness and the viciousness of certain points is quite apparent and very vulgar, without any meaning to it. So, for example, the beginning, when the first warrior that Conan kills, he kills him so savagely that his face becomes a complete and utter mess, which doesn't make much sense in that moment, because it's not that much of a dire fight. It has just begun, right? And Conan is already like smashing faces. It's it's very flashy without actually adding anything to the story. But it is not the most apparent point. For me, the most apparent point actually is the ending, where Conan and Juma go to the Great Khan, and they are having this sort of like conversation, like, oh, you could have taken the girl with you, you could have married her, you could have had her as your companion on your journey. And Conan's like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. What I will tell you is the Great Khan's successor is already on the way. And Juma's like, how do you know? And he says, the princess told me. And the implication is that he had his way with the maiden and has impregnated her, which sounds like Conan to somebody who's never read Conan, because Conan is never this character. Conan is a guy who protects people and protects individuals, and he doesn't take advantage of persons, especially ones that have just been like weeks on end tortured through this journey. It's very un-Conan. But if you're trying to imitate Robert E. Howard, and all you have in your mind is that, like, Conan the Barbarian, and you take the barbarian side, this seems like a very plausible thing for him to do. But for me, it was so out of character that I was just like, this is, it's so tongue-in-cheek and so unneeded, especially at the end of the story, where the ending was so, in my opinion at least, please tell me if you don't agree, but I feel like the ending is probably the worst part because it's so rushed. And in this rushed ending, you're also going to add this one caveat at the end as a joke. I'm not really sure what the purpose of it was.
It strikes a false note.
The ending was very abrupt. I was like,
Yeah. I think the beginning and the ending are perhaps the weakest parts of this story.
I thought the beginning was actually good.
Well, you may think that in a general sort of way, but I'm thinking of the real beginning of the beginning, just the first two paragraphs, where he says there's a sentence, and then the attack came at sunset, and then there's some more background, and then without warning came the attack. In other words, he said the attack came twice in two different paragraphs. I don't think Howard would have done that. I think he would have expressed himself more elegantly. I agree that after that, it's all right.
I actually did have. I actually did spend a bit of time rereading the first couple of paragraphs, and that's mostly because there was some confusion in those two. I didn't pick up on the attack thing, but we were talking about sunset, and then there was a part where the south became lit with something, and I'm like, where the hell is the sun? So first we're talking about sunset. We should be
talking about
on
the
the west, and then all of a sudden the sun is at the south, and I'm like, wait, what? And I'm trying to picture the thing, and I'm like, maybe what they're saying is that the sunlight from the west tinted the snow grounds on the south. But I had to go over that a few times. Usually that is when I put down the book.
I would describe
the only reason I plowed through it is because I have to do the podcast.
I would describe the beginning because I agree with XJ on the part that the premise itself of starting in the middle of action, in the middle of combat, is really enticing. I would take the allegory of a mown lower, a really old one. You take it out of the shed and you start pulling on the cord, and you pull once and you pull twice, and it's kind of like, jumbles and mumbles, and finally it starts up. That's the way I would describe those first 3-4 paragraphs. Because once you get into it, you kind of forget about the fact that you needed to really pull hard on the cord.
Yeah, I would agree absolutely with that analogy. Yeah. To be fair though, or rather to be honest though, if it wasn't for the podcast, I would have put down the book right there. Because I'm like, I anytime I have to go back and reread something, it usually breaks immersion. And once the immersion is broken for me, it's very hard to get back in.
The story The Scarlet Citadel by Robert E. Howard it starts in the middle of a battle, or near the end of a battle. So it might be instructive to compare that one with this. Although that is, in the Scarlet Citadel, it's a battle involving thousands. It's a real historic battle. It's not just an attack on the caravan. But to those involved, of course, being attacked is being attacked. So.
Scarlet Citadel, that is a really good one. We could look at that one. Sure.
Yeah. So you have 200,000 other bad things about the story. I want to hear them.
It's went from 1,000 to 2,000. Next we're gonna be like, so a million other things.
200,000.
I think just one more thing I'd like to say, and that's concerning Juma, which is this character who, as Nikki says, is an attractively drawn character. I think when you're writing a pastiche, you have to think about quite a big issue, which is, if you're writing in the style of an author of a different time, is do you try and infuse virtues into him which he didn't possess? Because Howard, being a 1930s Texan, was obviously drank in racism with his mother's milk, and I don't think that he would ever have had a black as a sort of co-hero in a story with Conan. I'm pretty sure.
Yet at the same time, he was, and throughout the short stories that he's written, much more respectful when he's describing anybody of a different race, which is equally hilarious, right?
I agree with you there, but I'm just thinking that in general, when you're writing a pastiche, it is a problem. Do you try and improve people's characters? And I think the James Bond franchise has got it right. They've killed off 007 in the last film because obviously, in an age swarming with wokies and politically correct people, there isn't any place for James Bond. So you might as well kill him off.
I mean, they kill him off in like almost every other movie as well, though, right? Like,
Oh no, not really.
yeah, he comes back in the middle of the story, but him dying is a huge trope in these movies, isn't it?
Oh, I haven't noticed that myself.
I mean, look at Skyfall.
Well, he doesn't die then.
No, he does. He gets shot off a
doesn't
train
die.
and then he falls. Yeah, he doesn't die. Yeah, we find out that he doesn't die.
The James Bond movies that were made after the 2000s, maybe, but before that, he had quite the plot armor. Let's just put it that way.
He was invincible in some way. Okay, that's
It's not like the Dracula movies where Dracula keeps having to come back.
Oh, but those are awesome. Come on, you're talking about the Hammer ones, right? The Hammer.
Right.
Let me tell you, nothing is greater than having a box of beer, 6 friends, a popcorn, and a big projector to watch those Hammer movies. Amazing. And it doesn't even have to be Dracula. All of their Frankenstein ones are amazing. It's all gory, funny, and stupid, and in some places, dramatic. But most of the time, you're kind of just watching it, being like, "This is actually happening on this screen I'm watching."
Well, one is appreciating how much one can do on a very low budget.
That's right. They were very low budget. You're right.
I am.
All right.
We had a offline discussion about bit of a discussion about special effects and visual effects. I think just because of the previous podcast, and and at that time during the discussion, I was thinking of a movie by Peter Jackson, but I cannot recall the name of the movie. It's really stupid. But I had a fun time doing exactly what Nikki just described, which was we looked at the movie. I mean, the special effects in that movie, which was mostly physical effects, was really good. The only thing I can remember about the movie, though, was the Sumatran red monkey or something like that. And that may ring some bells from our viewers, but that was really dumb. I had exactly that experience with friends. It kind of did make me sick to my stomach too. the gore was really gory. But anyway.
All right, back to the City of Skulls. I think it had actually a different title, something like the City of Shamballa or like Shadows of Shamballa. I can't remember the exact wording, but they changed it. All right, so we've pretty much destroyed this poor story.
To be fair, the story itself isn't terrible. Just some bits of it that's quite bad.
That's what I'm. But we've painted a picture through discussing the really terrible stuff to our viewers and readers and listeners. That maybe we didn't enjoy it. In the end, I would say that this is fiction that you can enjoy. It is not something that one would turn their nose away from, except if you are very sensitive to the style of writing when it comes to what's it called, more politically incorrect sections of the book of the story.
Well, this is all very well if assuming that our lucky viewers, have read all the genuine Howard Conan stories and are now interested in hearing us talk about this one. But there's a risk that we might make it seem better than it really is, so that somebody who hasn't read any Conan at all might start with this one and that would be a shame.
Wait
definitely no
a minute, Robert.
Yeah.
I thought you were a great lapper up of things. So you should be giving this story like a 8 or 9.
No, not when it comes to pastiches, I'm afraid. No.
Okay. So we do have a situation where you're not such a great lapper upper of things.
No.
I think the lapper rapper this week is me, because I really enjoyed it despite all its flaws.
I mean, yeah,
I've become Robert.
I don't disagree with Robert mostly though. There are some I rated a 7.5, but to be honest, if it's not something that I would organically pick up, like the first 2 paragraphs would turn me away. Even though the rest of it I could see has some standard there. It's not badly written by any means, but just like there are a couple of things that specific to myself that I would be like, if I have to reread something in a short story, no less, then it's usually an immediate turn off for me. But I'm interrupting you, Robert. Please go ahead.
Just to say, I think the whole subject of pastiches is fascinating because it's like looking for the philosopher's stone. Just think if you could discover a way of writing a 100% good pastiche, like say there was a mental technique you could undergo, some sort of initiation where you suddenly were able to get the implications of an author's style and use those implications to create more work, then you could start writing Conan stories as though they'd been written by Howard, as though he hadn't shot himself at age 30 but had gone to live to be about 90, writing a new Conan story every month. I just think how good that would be. So
if this is anything at all like doing because in art we have a thing that we call master studies, where we actually sit down and paint a painting that an older master had already done. Like we would so we would sit down and try to repaint Rembrandt, for instance. And a really good artist, that is a practice, that is something that we do back in art school, and and somebody who's good can actually do it to the point where you can't tell the difference. But one, you have to be, in a sense, you have to be better than the original, because not only do you have to read his brush strokes and get everything right, but you have to get into his head and know what he's doing. And it's very hard work. It's very hard work. I've managed to paint in the style of other people in a way that was to, like, in a quick glance, you can't tell the difference. Not a master though, just to be clear. But it's a lot of work. It's very tiring, and I don't want to do it.
No.
Yeah.
A bit soul destroying as well, because
it's very soul sapping.
You know, could put into doing your own in original stuff would be better.
For sure.
Yeah.
If I may add, with my own experience, the first 5 or 6 classes of school, years of school that I studied were in Russia, but then I moved to UK, and we had in Russia we had 2 subjects. We had the subject of the Russian language rules, and then the second subject, which was the Russian literature and literature of the world. Those were 2 separate studies. But when I was in the English school, English language and English literature became kind of the same subject at a certain point. there was an assignment that I remember, not so fondly, but it does pertain to what both you, Robert, and XJ have been talking about. They gave us the assignment of copying the style of an author through a single chapter of written work. So we'd have to write like a single chapter of written work, which was like the style of the author. And we were separated into 5 or 6 groups, and each were given a different author and a different work. And my group was given The Great Gatsby by Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. Sorry. And what I did for my assignment, because we all had to do it individually. So what I did was I created a Francis Scott Fitzgerald Bible, where I wrote down the stuff that he would have in his stories, like people being ambiguously good or bad, nuances of characters, the way he describes things, the way he begins chapters, the way he ends chapters, and from collecting all of that, in the end, I basically had sort of a guideline to this is how I think, at least at that point. And I wasn't too dumb at the time, because we reviewed a story that I'd written at the time, The Clock Story, if you guys remember.
Mm-hmm.
So this was around the same time that I was doing this. And I don't know if I have this Bible still somewhere in my computer, because I did do it digitally. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think, if you are going to spend an entire semester, which is 3 months of your time, and you could kind of do it, I think if you spent a year or two and you actually went through every single word that this author has written in every story they've made, you could realistically create this Bible that would have a thing where you could generate work that is uncanny, so uncannily similar to the way they write it, that it would be almost seamless, just like XJ said, where you have to be almost better at this work than the person creating it. But I think it's kind of like it's a self-defeating exercise, isn't it?
Yeah,
also,
it's not something that I would.
Sorry,
no, Robert, please go ahead.
Robert, go on.
I was going to say, Howard himself, if he came back and were writing stories, would write stories including things that weren't in the so-called Bible, which Nicky had compiled. You see, he'd be adding.
Well, I mean, the difference is between this Carter chap and his buddy, and
Sorry, good way.
And Robert E. Howard is expanding his universe, is building his world. Carter and company is just living in it and telling stories in it to generate revenue. Is two different motivations.
Yeah.
Wager that there's such a thing as I wouldn't exactly say an inheritor, but there is an idea of a successor, I think, at least in some stories. It's very rare when somebody picks up the flag and you could very genuinely say, like, oh, I really enjoy the fact that this individual has done so and has taken the reign. And it has happened quite recently, actually, with Berserk, a fantastic work, a fantastic manga written by Kentaro Miura, which has been discontinued for a couple of months because Miura had unfortunately died, and his best friend, whose name I'm unfortunately forgetting, picked up the mantle. And so far, the latest chapters of this work that I've seen are very much like the ones written by Miura, and it is it's startling almost, the fact that it's similar in such a way where honestly, if somebody didn't tell me that this was going on, maybe I've noticed 1 or 2 things, but I would have just thought, oh, I guess Miura is changing stuff up a little bit. I wouldn't have even thought like, oh, this is not Miura.
to contrast that, there is another situation where an author has picked up where a previous author had ended, and that is Robert Jordan and Brian Sanderson on The Wheel of Time. That I don't think either Nikki or Robert had read that particular series. I don't think. But Brian Sanderson's books felt very different. It actually, you don't have to say the word felt. It is very different from Robert Jordan. And yeah, I can't quite say I enjoyed Brian Sanderson's style.
Koji Mori, by the way, is the name of the author.
Yeah,
Koji Mori is the name of the.
They
author
actually the story between Koji Mori and Kentaro Miura is quite spectacular actually. Yeah,
it's a beautiful romance story. Well, from what I've heard,
beautiful romance.
From what I've heard, the connection between Guts and Griffiths is somewhat taken from their friendship, which is very concerning. Because the question is, which one sacrificed his friends to? Never mind.
Well, I mean, from Miura's words, right? Sometimes he is Griffiths, and sometimes he is Guts. And Koji is the same. Anyway, all of this is probably completely alien to Rob. So
yeah, sorry, Robert.
Well, it's like collaboration, isn't it? I mean, collaboration it can be good, like in science fiction novels of Frederick Pohl and Cyril Kornbluth. They wrote 4 novels together, but then Kornbluth died, and that was the end of that. But I suppose you could collaborate across time. You know, you could go on collaborating even when one of you is dead, sort of thing. It's theoretical.
Yeah, that's true. So the thing about Robert Jordan, XJ.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like Robert Jordan's work?
I actually really like the works in general.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 books were fantastic. Past that, it was starting to become a drag. There are certain elements in the book that I did not like because it started getting too repetitive, which is the gender wars inside the story, and I'm like, man, okay, I get it. Can we just stop and get to the point and get to the story, please? In my mind. And the first 3 books were very, very epic, very, very much in the Tolkien style, which he was trying to ape. After that, though, it started dragging, and then I don't think he had a good resolution to all the mysteries that he had been painting, and we will never know how he would end the story. But the way Brian Sanderson ended it, supposedly based on Robert Jordan's notes, tells me he basically did J.J. Abrams, which was made a mystery box that he couldn't really review.
Often the problem with a lot of conclusions, actually, for any epic. So the reason I brought that up is Robert Jordan has done Prestiges.
Oh yeah,
Conan.
Really? Oh yeah.
Not 1, not 2, but 3 books. Not short stories, but novels, active novels, with a trilogy, and it's very epic. It's actually
I remember now. Yeah,
great
fantasy. Yeah, I remember now. He actually did write some Conan stories. Yeah, that's right.
So I don't suggest that we read what's it called 3 novels for the podcast, but I think one of them is only 300 pages.
Only?
So if we ever wanted to do comparatively, right?
I suppose to Robert Jordan that is a short story because
that's what I was saying. Yes. But what I'm saying is, if we ever feel compelled to review anything by Robert Jordan, I don't know if he has any short stories.
No, I will never review anything by Robert Jordan in this podcast.
Oh wow. Okay, here we go. Why?
It's he writes door stoppers, man.
Let me see if there's any. Hold on. Robert Jordan short story. Short stories. There are.
Really?
Let's see. Yeah.
Anyway,
List-
I don't figure Rob would be very interested.
Why are you speaking for Rob?
Yeah.
Okay, Robert.
As a
Are you-
way
would you-
to bring him back into a conversation. He can dispute me if he wants to.
I think you're undoubtedly right, actually.
I am surprised. What do you have against Robert Jordan?
The fact that I haven't heard of him.
That's very pompous, Robert. It's
No, I mean it's more like I think I'm speaking for you again, Rob. But you have very particular tastes. Should it be a 1980? Should it be an old world science fiction story? You would be lapping it up.
Possibly.
Listen. There is Robert Jordan has written a short story that's 6 pages long. I think we could do
Oh yeah.
a word on that.
Yeah.
See, Robert,
as long as it's low effort.
Exactly. So if he doesn't have to suffer for long for this new author, honestly, Robert, I did not expect you to say what you just did. I am
Hey.
almost convinced that I have entered a parallel universe. Where
Okay, we're
Yeah.
coming up to an hour, and so do we have any last word on this pastiche?
I think just one final warning: if you haven't read any Conan stories yet, read the original ones first, and
Don't read
then
this
once you've read all of those, you can read the City of Skulls if you like.
what do you give it out of 10, Robert?
Probably about 3.6.
3.6.
I like the fact that there's 0.6.
9.5 from.
I really like the fact that there is a 0.6.
Not even a 0.5. Why 0.6, Robert? Could you explain the 6 there?
Yeah. I wanted to be fair,
You give it an extra little decimal. Okay. Well, there's something that I wanted to mention, and perhaps you would want to comment on this, but I want to say, tell you what was my favorite moment in the entire story, and I think it's the last fight with the King Yama statue, the demon sort of coming out, and
that's quite good.
yeah, it's a really good action scene, and it's solved in a very cruel but interesting way, where the young God King is thrown underneath the statue, and he gets crushed. And it's not Conan who solves the puzzle this time.
Yeah,
it's actually somebody else saving his life, which I also found refreshing. I thought both of those points in that scene really made it stand out to me. I would be a little bit less harsh than Robert, and I would give this story a solid 6 out of 10.
Yeah, for me 7.5, because the technical wise, like the craftsmanship wise, there's really nothing that stands out to me as terrible, other than the ones that I've already described, which has more to do with the spatial setup that the authors didn't take into account. I found the descriptions to be vivid. I can see the landscape in my mind. Yeah, not something I would pick up, but because of the podcast, I was forced to, and so I give it 7.5.
Can you stop talking about how you're being held hostage by the podcast?
I mean, I'm being honest. The first 2 paragraphs normally would have turned me off any other short stories, just because I don't have the kind of time that I used to have.
That's right. That's same here. I'm a very busy man.
Sorry.
Especially
The way-
after I'm semi-retired. I'm even busier.
busier with your own desires and not wanting to spend your time on something trivial. That I
I'm trying to
understand.
learn Russian, for goodness sake. I mean,
What a time to choose to do that, huh?
yeah.
All right.
Rob is trying to learn French, and now he's trying to learn Russian. Next thing I know, he'll try to learn Chinese.
Well, I severely doubt that.
Well, for anyone out there who wants to learn Chinese, my advice to you is to stop and put your time to a more productive use.
I thought we were gonna get some sagely advice here. Instead, it was
That dude,
you're not going to succeed. Get out.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the amount of time you need to spend on getting Mandarin right, you might as well as spend learning other languages, and you can probably learn 2 or 3 in the amount of time you need to sink into Mandarin.
Yeah.
You could learn, for instance, French, and it will get you a very decent way to Spanish and Italian, for instance.
Yeah.
All right. Well, final thought on this: the City of Skull. We wish you were better, but you were.
Fair enough.
No, it's honestly, I have to bring one more thing up, Robert. I think you were too harsh to the story when it came to the rating. I think you could have given a higher one, and I really want to know why. Why were you so harsh with a 3.6?
Hard to say, really. You can't quantify these kind of insights that just kind of flow into one's mind, you know.
But if you had to, if I put a gun to your head, what would you say?
I'd say shoot, probably, because it's too difficult.
That is a good answer. All right.
I do really wish that there were more Howard stories. I just wish he hadn't shot himself, but you know, he did. So that
It is the same way I feel about John Wyndham. Not that John Wyndham shot himself, but that there are more stories by him.
yeah, he didn't. He lived to be about 63 or something. Was it? Or 66?
Respectable, yeah.
66. That's not very much.
Yeah, that's respectable. I mean, I just wish there were more John Wyndham stories.
Yeah.
He is one of my favorite authors, man. I never get tired of reading him. I reread The Kraken Wakes God knows how many times, and I usually don't do that.
It's the same for me for Robert, I guess. I think I've reread God in the Ball at least, you know, if we were to quantify it, twice a year. It wasn't twice a year, but there was like a period of time when I reread God in the Ball like 6 times in 2 months. Because when I was younger, it really impacted me. I liked that story so much, and I liked the style of it so much that I always wanted to relive it. And I tried to find different works that hit the same, but they didn't. And I just always came back to like, wow, I'll read The God in the Ball again.
And now I want to reread The Kraken Wakes because that is so good. And maybe one day we will do a podcast on The Kraken Wakes.
Yeah.
Is it a short story?
It is
Or is it
not.
a
novel?
No.
Bro.
No, it's not a short story, but it's something we can consider. But yeah, it'll be months down the road if we tried that. It is very good, but it is a novella. How long is it, Rob?
200 and something pages. I don't know. Can't remember. I've got it here, but I don't want to rush upstairs and count the pages.
You have everything.
Yeah.
Physical copies are great, man. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So is that the last word from everybody?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Don't look at this work and sort of like consider it as terrible, but also, as Robert said, don't read it as your first Conan story. Don't make that
Right.
mistake.
So in conclusion, don't read this story. All right.
That's what I
Anyway,
said.
okay. we have to cut the podcast now. So it was fun, great. Always a pleasure to get with you, gentlemen, and to our readers out there, have a good one. Thank you for listening.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.